Hi guys, this is just a quick video tutorial on how to use the finance functions of your Texas Instrument graphing calculator. So whether you have a TI-nSpire or a TI-89, even a TI-84, they all have the ability to help you solve some financial questions or problems that you may come across. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit and show you how to do that. So first thing, before we jump into the calculator, I wanted to just describe to you a little bit about what we're going to do and tell you a little bit about what some of the things mean on the calculator. So the first thing, when you go to the finance solver, depending on which calculator you have, you may have to look for something called the Tvm solver. And so TVM simply means time value of money. And so the Tvm solver will allow us to solve for the value that's added to or subtracted from your money over time. And so a couple of things that you're going to notice on there, there's going to be something that says N. Okay, that's the number of payments you're going to make. So if you're taking out a loan, excuse me. If you're taking out a loan, that would be the number of months or whatever it is you're going to pay it back. If you're investing, then it's the number of times you're going to invest. But either way, it's the number of times that money is getting paid. There's I. And of course, that's the interest rate. Sometimes this is published. So if you're putting in a bank account or borrowing money, they'll tell you what the interest rate is. Other times you might have to estimate it. As I showed earlier with the investing into the market, you have to kind of go with your gut, look at the historical data, and then sort of see, how aggressive do you want to be in your investments, and that will help you determine what you can use for R. There's something called PV, which is the present value. There's something called the PMT, which is the payment. And there's something called FV, final value. And these are important. There's a present value, what it's worth right now today. And this gets a little tricky because depending on what it is you're doing, if you're investing and you're just starting out, present value is probably 0. If you're borrowing money, then the present value is the amount of the loan that you get. And I always like to think of it as like, if this is my bank account, then, if I'm investing, then every time I take money out of my bank account and goes over to my investment, then this is a payment that I'm making. And since my bank account is going to go down, I use a negative number. Okay, so if my interest or my present value was 0, my payment was a negative 200, that means I'm putting out a negative 200, then my final value in the end will be positive because then the final value comes back into my bank account. Makes sense? Loans is the opposite. The loan, you take out a loan, you've got a big present value, that's money you got. Now, you may not have the actual cash, you may have the car or the house that's worth X amount of dollars, but that's a positive, then your payment will be negative because that's money going out of your account to try and get that final value down to probably 0 if you're paying off your loan. Down at the bottom, there's these little PPY and CPY, and that's payments per year. And this is compounding periods per year. Oops. So that's usually 12. It may be something different, and in which case you would have to adjust it. But usually we're making monthly payments, and so that's 12. When you change 1 to 12, it automatically changes the other one to 12. If there's some reason to make them different, you can, but when you first put them in as 12, they should automatically fill in both. And then you just put in either beginning or the end of the month down at the bottom. And so these are the time value of money inputs. And now we're going to go take a look and see how they work. So if you had a chance to write those down, cool. If not, I'll put that slide back up here in a minute. We're going to switch over to my document camera here. So I'm going to disappear, but you should still hear my voice. So hang on just a second. Now I am using a TI-nSpire calculator because that's what I have available here at home. But of course, TI-89, the TI-84, they all have the same capability. If you're unsure, feel free to email me, put it in the comments below, whatever, and somebody can help you out with that. But and if I get a chance, I'll jump in there and let you know. Oh, my calculator screen's a little dusty. Hold on. There we go. Get that out of there. So on the nSpire, for those of you who have one, know that the menu button has a lot of the menus that we're going to be looking at. Oh, there's some nasty glare on my calculator, but if you go down to the very bottom, you can see something that says choice number 8 says finance, and that happens to be right where the glare is. Let me move my calculator up so you can see it. So there you go. That's where we're going. We're going to the finance calculator, and you can see that it's got a lot of different things on there. It's got the TVM functions, amortization, cash flow, interest conversion, days between days. We're not going to worry about any of that. We're going to go straight to the finance solver, which is number 1, which has all those inputs that I was just describing to you. And that glare is really obnoxious. I'm sorry about that. So my first example I wanted to look at was if we wanted to buy a car. Oh yeah, slide the calculator there. Typically car loans, you can get them for as short as 3 years, maybe even 2. You can go up to, some car shops are doing like 84 months now, which is 7 years. And so the idea is pretty simple. You're going to take your number of payments. Let's say typical car loan, we're going to do 60 months. And interest rate for my car loan, 9% is pretty high in today's market, but it's not, impossible that you end up at that high rate, especially depending on your credit. I'm going to put in something a little lower just because I think we could probably do better. And here's the present value. Now, this is not how much the car actually costs. This is how much you're actually going to borrow. And so let's say we had to borrow, depending on the car we're looking at, who knows? Let's say $18,500 we had to borrow. So maybe we're looking at a fairly nice new car. Now, what I'm most interested in probably is calculating my monthly payment. So let me fill in the rest of the variables. And then you can see we could press enter to calculate this. But notice final value, if you're borrowing the money, they want you to pay the whole thing off. So the final value should be 0. Here's that PPY and CPY. And as I mentioned, I think I'd used this earlier. So they were both 12s. If yours aren't 12s, type in 12 to the first one. It should change the next one to 12 automatically. And then whether you make your payment at the beginning or the end of the month, you can choose right here. I'm going to put mine at the beginning of the month. And so to finally solve for my payment, I move my cursor up to the payment line, hit enter, and there is my monthly payment for my vehicle. Okay, so assuming whatever the price was doesn't matter. It's that I had to borrow $18,500, and I could do so at 6.5% interest for the next 60 months, which is 5 years. I would be paying $360, and what's that, about 2 cents? Well, let's be honest, they're going to round that up to 3 cents. So there's a quick tutorial on how to borrow money and figure out your monthly payment with your TI-nSpire. Also, as I mentioned, the present value was a positive $18,500 because I got the value of that. And the payment is a negative because that's money going out of my bank account. If you were trying to figure out an investment, okay, so let's do something a little different. Let's say we're going to invest, and so and maybe you're at age 30 and you want to invest until age 60 for retirement. Okay, so that's 30 years, that's 360 months. Okay, and I don't know what you're going to invest in, but let's leave it at 6.5% for right now. You can fiddle around with the interest rates later. My present value, let's say I'm just starting out, so I've got $0. And now we're like, okay, well, how much a month am I going to pay? Obviously, I just had a $360 a month car payment. Maybe I can't quite afford that much. Maybe I'll just say $250 a month. And what I'm interested in is the final value. I'm going to leave PPY and CPY alone at 12 and payment at the beginning of the month. It doesn't change that much if you fiddle around with the payment timing, but it's usually once a month. And so I hit enter, and oh, look, if I do $250 a month from the time I'm 30 to the time I'm age 60, I'll end up with $278,000 and some change in my retirement account. It's that simple. Notice again, the final value is positive because that's money coming back to me. Maybe you have a goal in mind. Maybe you're like, no, I want to have $1 million when I retire. Okay. And you want to know, well, okay, so maybe I'm still going to put 6.5% interest in here. I still want to save for 30 months. How much would I have to save per month for those 30 years? Well, you can solve that here too. And you can see you'd have to put away almost $900 a month if you wanted to have $1 million in 30 years at 6.5% interest. Make sense? So yeah, you can change any of these parameters around, and you can do investing, you can do borrowing. It solves all sorts of finance problems for you very simply, very easily right here. Oh, and you can solve for any one of the variables. You could say, oh, okay, well, maybe I can't save $900 a month. I can only do $500 a month. Okay, notice it's a negative 500. I want to know how many months it's going to take me to get to $1 million. Okay, well, that's going to take 450, let's say 460 months. 456 months is a long time. Okay, so maybe you're like, oof, all right, well, I can't do that. Maybe I'll put it back to 360. And you're like, well, how much interest would I have to earn to get to $1 million? And then you can say, oh, okay, well, if I could get 9.4%, I could do that at $500 a month. So now you have to figure out how you're going to get 9.4%. That's a tricky question. But that is a very quick tutorial in how to use your TI-nSpire or 89 or 84. They all work pretty similarly. They have the same inputs, and that's how you use the calculator to answer your finance questions. So one more time, if you missed anything early on, these were the different inputs that you need. Remembering to have that sign change in there is really important. And there you go. So hopefully that helps you make some financial decisions down the road. I certainly use that calculator for a lot of different things. So, all right, guys, there we go. Have a great day.